Top church leadership mistakes of 2024. Stick around right now for the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malfers Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and AJ Matthew.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, AJ Matthew. AJ, welcome to the end of another year.
It is last episode for 2024. Almost end of the year. Going to be the end for us as far
That's
as...
right. This is the last you're going to hear from us this year, and I am sipping out of my Epcot mug, which always makes me happy. So,
No,
it's a
any
good day.
connection to the end of the year with that, or you just had to throw that in? It's Epcot Center.
I just so deeply love and miss that place.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite places in the world.
The cup looks a little lavender from here. You got a lavender latte in there as well?
No, it's just coffee with just a splash of half and half.
All right. Well, shout out to Disney, not a sponsor. Scott hopes maybe someday.
One day. One day I would love for Figment to be sponsoring this podcast.
For Figment, yeah. That's a figment of your imagination that would happen.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, before we get started, a quick reminder, there's only a couple weeks left in the year. 20% off Plus accounts at malfersgroup.com/toolkit. The Healthy Churches Toolkit is running a discount sale on Plus accounts, 20% off. Grab that before the end of the year, or suffer the consequences of a higher price on January 1st. I don't know how else.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that saves you like $300. So it's a well worth taking advantage of that opportunity. And I'm telling you right now, it's been really one of the fun things, because now we're almost more than 2 months into the toolkit launching, and I'm getting to meet with various people who are in the toolkit and how they're using the resources, and they're applying the things that they're learning from, whether it's the leadership pipeline material or maybe it's like especially the leadership pipeline material, but also strategic envisioning, and the feedback is just incredible. So, and that's the vision behind this, is to get these concepts at the granular level that we can't handle in a 25 or 35 minute podcast, get into them in a more granular level in the content. And it's very rewarding. So
we've got a special edition coming to the toolkit probably in January as well. Some additional content that I think you're going to be pretty excited about. We're excited about it. So you can grab it now at a discount. And stay tuned. No more
fun.
Not revealing anything.
You're such a tease, AJ Matthew. Yes. We got some fun stuff planned for next year. So hop in there and take advantage of it. I just wouldn't want to say, maybe not to tease into this episode too far, but in light of the fact that we know it's hard to get access to resources, high quality resources, and money's tight and things like that, this is an incredible opportunity for you to kind of check a lot of boxes. It's leadership development material. It's social media graphics. It's some AI stuff in there. It's a resource library. There are all kinds of things that are inside of this toolkit that check a lot of needs that you might have. Especially when you look at it over the course of the year, it's just a very small dent in your overall budget. So please go take advantage of that. malfersgroup.com/toolkit. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So we got just three things that we're kind of reflecting back on 2024 that might have been kind of missed or didn't get the attention that they should
You're softening
have.
This, AJ. We're calling these the biggest church leadership mistakes of 2024.
Here's 3 ways you failed horribly this year.
On my list would be probably mentioning my Epcot Center cup on this podcast.
Yeah, that was a failure.
That's number one. Point number one.
Failure. Too much Disney
cup
in 2024. That was. Oh no! Wait, that's every year.
That's That's probably true. Okay, no, but legitimately, we've got three things. We went through. AJ and I recognize that we both have this tendency to want to. We think that the biggest problems facing the church are the same problems every year and all the time, which is true. It's a little bit like diagnosing why I watched the Cowboys lose last night, AJ, and every time they lose a football game, it's not rocket science. It's like, oh, you didn't block. Oh, when this guy ran past you, you didn't wrap him up for a tackle. And so when we talk about mistakes in church leadership, it's the blocking and tackling kinds of things that trip up churches. So I guess I want to start with just that and say we're going to talk about some very niche things, some very specific to 2024 type things that maybe don't come up every year. But the most fundamental flaws that most churches make are the blocking and tackling things. But we're going to talk about some things that are maybe a little more specific to 2024.
Yeah. All right. The first one up is ignoring AI trends. This is probably, I don't remember another tech phenomenon that developed so rapidly as AI.
The internet?
No. I mean, no. I mean, it was years,
Come on.
people getting
96. Like I can remember 96. Like that was a big year, I feel like, for the internet.
I don't know.
That's the year that sticks out in my mind. I don't know if that's true.
But we were probably still in 2000 going, if your church doesn't have a website, if you're not keeping your website up to date, you should do that. You should get that.
We're still saying that.
That's true. That's your bonus number 4.
Yeah, some of your churches' websites look like they haven't been updated since 1996. You still got like a what was that called? Like Net Geo space, Net Geo. What was it? It was like the free Microsoft thing that you could make.
The old Netscape. There's an old browser, Netscape browser. Yeah,
it was like Geo. I don't remember.
If you're optimized for Netscape 4, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. AI, it's only been a few years that's even been part of the vernacular. And now it's like commonplace on our devices and, happening. So, but yeah, so, I mean, there's not a lot. I don't think there's not like 50 things to talk about in regard to churches and AI. I think one of the things maybe that's ignored is, policy on it. Like let's have a leadership conversation about it. What is useful? What's dangerous? And let's just make sure we're all on the same page for that. I don't know. Maybe that's all we even need to say about it, Scott. What you and I shared the same position on this. It has some amazing functionality. We've built it into the toolkit in some specific ways. That's just a huge time saver for you and your staff. But then there's like the dangerous side of it, like the pastor that's just Googling, Matthew 18 sermon.
Yeah.
So that's a no-go. Using it, as to help us fill in a spreadsheet is cool. That's great. Let's save 15 minutes over here or there.
Yeah. We don't need to. We've done 2 episodes on this. And we laughed because they're not necessarily 2 of our most popular episodes in the last year or so. And that I think actually plays into the fact that I think this is a mistake, that churches are not thinking enough about this. And I think you're exactly right. You need to have an AI, you need a position. Like, what is our position? I think that the range is open to you. You can say, we're never going to use it. We're not going to touch it. As a church, we're going to say we're never using AI tools. That's an option. I don't think that's the best option, but it's your discretion. You could say that. You could say we're all in and we're going to use it in every way that we can think of that would be helpful to us. That I think is probably also not the best option because you don't want to be careless. I think the best option is sort of a middle way where we're thoughtful and go, there are certain ways that we are going to apply the use of artificial intelligence, or really these are generative LLMs or whatever. I mean, I think using the term AI itself is maybe half the problem because it's like, what do we mean by that?
Yeah.
And I think most people now just synonymously associate ChatGPT or things like ChatGPT with AI. And really what that is that it's a large language model, or an LLM. It's generative AI. And so specifically that, how are we going to use that, if at all? So we have taken some stances, and we think that there are certain things it's good at. It's really good at repackaging your own content. So we use it to help us with certain things where we create something original, and then we ask AI to repackage it so it saves us time. We do inside the toolkit. We have something that I actually was just showing this to a church this past weekend, AJ, and they were blown away by it. The fact that you could take a sermon outline that you created, or sermon notes that you put the time in and created, and then it can translate that into a very high quality discussion guide in seconds without the prompting. That's the other thing. Becoming very good at making these things reliable requires being good at prompting. So we like that in the toolkit. You don't have to be good at prompting. We've done all of that for you. You just fill in the form, and then it spits out a reliable output. So there are I think, proper, healthy, good ways to use artificial intelligence or generative AI. And there are unhelpful ways. But this is a mistake. If your church hasn't had a conversation about it, then you may already have people in your church. This is what you need to know. You may already have people in your church using AI in ways you wouldn't want them to. And so unless you have a conversation, it's just everyone does what's right in their own eyes, their own AIs, as it were. So yeah, I know you're tired of hearing about AI in every commercial. It's like, go to Wendy's now with AI. Go to, everything is AI. And so maybe that's why you're just sick of it, but that's not a good excuse for not having a conversation.
Yeah. There you go. Okay. The second thing that I think has sort of snuck up on a lot of us this year, and what we're saying is that the church leadership has misjudged economic realities.
Mm-hmm.
We're mostly talking U.S. However, I mean, there's just a lot of economies worldwide are experiencing the same thing, and that is, inflation and the rising cost of things. So, yeah, it does feel like, we kind of got to the end of the year, and maybe just now I think everybody's aware of it. I don't think everybody has been applying it in leadership in the church to think, what do we need to be doing organizationally? How do we need to be viewing our people, their ability to give, and what should we be looking at funding continuously for the rest of 2024? I'm talking about, this should have been the conversation 3 to 6 months ago, and now into 2025. Is 2025 even another hypothetical question, regarding budgeting, which you should have done by now if your fiscal year ends with the calendar year? Should we be, faith budgeting for 2025? Like, let's go ahead and just throw 5-10% growth on there. Is that responsible or not? There's obviously some spiritual questions baked into these topics. And so I'm not telling you what's right or wrong, but misjudging where people are at economically and what the church's ability is for next year to fund things is a conversation that, if you haven't had it yet, we should be talking about this.
Yeah. So this episode is titled Mistakes. And I think this was a mistake. I think that people rightly projected that inflation would cool a bit or taper off a bit in 2024, which by the numbers, in fact, it did. Inflation, especially in the back half of 2024, isn't nearly as bad as it was 2 years ago. But the problem with inflation is that it's cumulative. So I think even though a lot of the heaviest inflation hit 2 years ago, when you combine 3 or 4 years, what we've had, however long it's been, I guess, through maybe 3-ish years of just very hot inflation, that I think that we're just paying the penalty for it now. So 9% in 1 year, yeah, that's a lot in 1 year, but you you eat it, and then 7% the next year, you eat it. And then, so even though this year, I think on average, it's been like somewhere between 3 and 4% for the whole year. This back half of the year, it's been like 2.5 or something like that. It's just, but it's not, it's 40%, 30% over 3 or 4 years. And it has really hurt churches. It's anecdotal, but I don't know that I've encountered a church this year that I've consulted with or chatted with who wasn't coming up short based on their budget. And so here would be my advice. AJ says he's not going to tell you what to do. I'll tell you what to do. You should not faith budget. That's what I say. I say estimate based on this year's giving what next year's giving would be. So that could still be an increase if the church has grown, and therefore, you can kind of project out some per capita giving based on what your current size of your church is. That may still be a growth in the budget. But you should not be like, we think that because inflation is slowing and maybe the economic conditions next year will be better than they were this year, which is a pretty reasonable assumption. I don't think that you should bake that into the cake. I think you should say, this is what we brought in this year. Or if we were to extrapolate out the last quarter of 2024's giving and then kind of build our budget based on that. That's what you should do. And then if there's surplus, you'll be happy. You'll be thrilled that there's surplus. But you'd rather be having discussions about how to deal with surplus than be having hard conversations about where you're going to have to tighten the belt. So I kind of am telling you what to do. Don't be like, we're going to increase 10% next year. You don't know that.
I guess I would say
it's going to take time. Even if things are better next year, it took time for the weight of inflation to really cripple people. It will take time for the easing of inflation to lift people up.
Yeah. I think maybe making that decision, to take that advice and to make that decision, is one that should be seen not as we don't trust God for that increase, is let's not stress out our people by pushing them too hard. I think that would be the frame in which that decision should be made. Yeah.
Yeah. Make faith choices about how you're spending your money and where you're spending your money, not on how much you think is going to come in. So things that you think, wow, this is taking a risk to invest in, this resource or this capital expenditure, at the expense of this thing or that thing, or taking the risk of hiring that additional staff person you've been waiting for 2 years and you really needed to, taking that risk. So take faith in those places. Don't put yourself in a really difficult economic position where you're assuming 20% growth or even 10% growth when you don't really have any data to back that up.
Yeah. All right. And our last mistake that we're going to mention here is abandoning some traditional elements. I think this is an interesting one to bring up.
For us, especially.
Yeah.
You wouldn't maybe expect this from us.
Yeah, perhaps not. Yeah. Part of, as we were putting this together, even the previous one about economic realities, we were talking about giving. Well, COVID kind of killed passing the plate, which, don't get me started on COVID. It's so ridiculous that we couldn't do that, or chose not to. But it didn't come back. We're just like, you know what? Why are we even doing this anyway? And I think now, with a solid 3 years post COVID, I think in 2024, I think this probably could have been a year of questioning maybe some things that we stopped, and we didn't do that. We just kind of have accepted it as the new reality. And in some ways that's fine. And in some areas, that's probably what we need to do. But I think this is one we probably by now we could have said, was that the best thing to do? And it's an interesting thing. And me and Scott talked about this before we went live on this episode, because COVID, one of the biggest fears in churches of COVID is, oh my gosh, not only can we not meet together, but we're afraid when nobody's coming here, they're also not going to be sending their money. That didn't happen. No. Very few churches saw the decline in attendance coincide with the decline in giving. It just didn't happen. People weren't coming, but they were still giving. Now here we are in 2024, and we're seeing more of the financial crisis happening than we did during COVID. But what we stopped doing was passing the plate. And so,
Well,
and I'm not saying there's a
not to
correlation.
interrupt. Yeah, I was going to say, I think the bigger thing is we were afraid of the virus hurting giving.
Yeah.
When we should have been afraid of inflation hurting giving, which is
right.
That is what happened.
Yeah.
Inflation.
I do wonder though. Maybe we should bring this more traditional element back of let's go ahead and spend a few minutes. Let's pass this. I think it's a good visual. So many churches now, mine included, we're spending 30 seconds on giving. Let's pray for an offering. Let's, if you'd like to give, you can do that online. You can drop it in the box in the back on your way out, and boom, we're on. We've moved on.
I don't want to get sidetracked on this for too long, but I am thinking, because our church has gone back to passing the plate. I give a lot of credit to them for doing that.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I mean, I'm like rabbit trailing off my rabbit trail, but when you do pass the plate, you're giving an opportunity for people to give who weren't going to give online, or maybe weren't going to drop something in the back. I mean, and
I think
there really are people.
Maybe it's a little bit. I think it's a thought-provoking action.
That's right. People still do drop cash in there. It's maybe not the majority of your giving or whatever, but anyways, I do still, every time the plate passes, I'm gonna go, oh man, I wish I had a little card that said I give online.
That's really big, so that the person next to you can go, oh.
It's like, I give on. In fact, I don't know if you've ever had this moment, but I'm on a row with, I guess, a whole bunch of online givers, and the usher comes up and starts to pass the plate and looks at you like, are you going to put anything in it? Because otherwise he's not, because it's just like me and my family on the row. The rest of the row is empty, so they're just looking at you like, are you going to put anything in here? And anytime that happens to me, I go, I give on.
You actually say it?
Yeah.
I mean, I felt that way for years, I mean, online giving is not new. I mean, and my family's been doing it for years, but pre-COVID, I felt the same way, like, passing.
Oh, I've been doing it for no more than a decade. I still go, I give online. But I wish it would be cool if there would be, because the offering isn't just about money. Like, I think it would be fun if churches, put other things in the seat back pockets, like offering cards where you could say, here's something I'm praying. I mean, people do have this in bulletins, like a connect card to put prayer requests, but just something else that you could put in, like, here's how I'm praying for my community, or I don't know. It would need to be something that's edifying and not just like to make you feel good and not feel bad about giving them.
Something for you to write a statement on that you're doing?
Oh, I don't know. It just would be cool if there was some way to engage in the passing of the plate, even when you're an online giver.
Okay.
I'm thinking extemporaneously, AJ. It's not a good or clarified idea. I'm just saying, if you're listening to this podcast and your church does something like this, email us at leadership@malfirstgroup.com. I'd love to hear all the ideas.
How about this?
On how?
If you're an online giver, the church sends you a booklet of
coupons.
That you put in. You only get those if you actually are giving. So then
I've joked I want a sticker that just says I give online. Like just so I can wear it on my shoulder.
So all right, so that was one kind of traditional element.
This point was actually not about passing the plate. The point is about how I think some churches have been too quick to abandon something that feels traditional, based on the assumption that if we get rid of all of the traditional things, this will help us grow. And I think that assumption is the mistake. Your passing the plate was not the problem. Sunday school as an institution was not the problem. How you do Sunday school might be the problem. And so I think there's actually a lot of redeemable things about Sunday school. We've talked about that on the podcast.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, there's numerous traditional worship service Sunday assembly elements that we've moved away from over a long period of time, decades. But what we have started to see in the news, in Christian church news, ramping up in the last few years is a desire, especially in younger generations, to recapture traditional elements, quote unquote, traditional elements. Some traditions decades old, some centuries, millennia old. And so the reason I think this is a top church leadership mistake is that the writing is beginning to show on the wall, and we're not responding to it. We're ignoring that and like, no. The world wants everything modern, wants everything contemporary. And I think we might be beginning a swing back into some more traditional and moderate styles. But I don't think our church leaders are necessarily hearing that message or responding to it.
Yeah. And I think there's another subset of churches who would listen to what we just said and said, yes, I was justified in changing nothing. The world is swinging back towards me. And I would I would contend the key ingredient is intentionality and thoughtfulness, not style. So I'm not saying that style counts for nothing. It clearly counts for something. I am suggesting that even if you maintain a tradition, there may be ways to iterate. And I can't remember what episode number this was, but it wasn't that long ago, sometime in the last few months. We talked about the value of iteration over innovation. And I would encourage you to do that. So don't make the mistake of throwing the baby out with the bathwater or blowing something up just because you perceive that something is not working.
Mm-hmm.
And so you assume that the whole thing's not working. Actually, AJ, you reminded me of this very principle. We were talking about something specific to the Malfers group, and I won't go into details, but something that I'm irritated with, and I want to blow it up to make it better. And you encouraged me, you said, why don't we change? Let's start with the one smallest, easiest change we could make and see if that makes it better. And then we'll move down the line, which is exactly what we taught in that episode a few months ago. And you're exactly right. So it's not a huge issue, but it's just like a microcosm reminder of, okay, I don't need to replace this piece of software that I hate. Like I have a visceral reaction to a piece of software we're using. And I want to blow it up and go, let's get a different piece of software. But you're like, let's make sure it isn't. The problem maybe isn't the software. It might be the way that we're using this software. So let's start with this edge thing and then move backwards. And you're right. So
yeah.
We take our own medicine.
Well, yeah. This is, don't hear Scott and AJ saying abandon small groups, or get rid of those. Get rid of the round tables in your Sunday school rooms and get those chairs in some nice sharp rows. I don't think that's not what we're saying. But you know what? Keep your eyes on. Have this conversation. This is part of what church leadership is trying to look out a little bit further into the future and to have your finger on the pulse of your congregation. And let's just have some discussions. Like, what are we feeling about this stuff? Maybe there's some pieces that we were too quick to be done with. Let's bring them back in a healthy way and maybe in an iterative manner. Because the reason we stopped doing something previously is because it probably was not working or maybe had faded. But yeah, maybe there's a way to reintroduce something in a creative way. So, all right, AI, some economy and some tradition on mistakes of 2024 from your pals, Scott and AJ.
Yeah, that's right. Want to remind you, one mistake or one thing that would not be a mistake would be for you to go to malfersgroup.com/toolkit.
An action item.
Sign up for 7 free days. Listen, we had 20 grants that basically knocked the price down by half for a lot of people. And we're praying for more resources to offer those same grants in 2025. So, but please do always reach out to us. We are a nonprofit organization. And if you need access to the toolkit for some reason or want to try it out, please just email us. And if there's anything that we can do, or if someone who applied for a grant didn't actually end up using it and you think your church definitely would, please reach out to us. We're always wanting to make sure that these resources, our goal is not to, make a ton of money. Our goal is to serve churches, and keep the lights on so we can keep serving churches. That's what we're here for. And so, yeah, please let us know if you need help. We're here to help you.
Amen to that. This has been episode 271 of the Church Revitalization Podcast. You can go to malfirstgroup.com/271 for today's video, audio, article, and whatnot. Thanks for being with us, everybody. It's mid-December, but we're saying Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. We will see you again in 2025.
Bye.